Welcome to Freedom Decoded. This podcast is from us. We are Carey and Demir Bentley, productivity coaches and co-founders of the Lifehack Method. This format is where we are going two-on-one. Demir and I both coaching one of our amazing Lifehack Tribe members on the productivity issues that are keeping them stuck and keeping them held back from their highest self and from achieving their ideal life. So we hope you enjoyed this in-depth coaching session. It is completely raw and unfiltered, and we hope that you get so much out of it. All right, welcome, Joan. Joan is a longtime client of ours, both in Lifehack Tribe and our Lifehack Bootcamp program. She is a wonderful artistic director and musician and many other things located on Vancouver Island. Joan, we are so happy to have you on the Freedom Decoded podcast. Would you care to share a little bit about yourself and your journey with Lifehack Tribe so far and the core issue that you're struggling with right now?
Sure. Well, it's been quite a number of years. I can't remember how many years. But when I first joined, I was struggling with my chamber music series. I was the artistic director and my husband was the manager. And I needed help because he wanted out. And so Lifehack Tribe has really helped me because I got a new manager and we professionalized. I got a huge raise. And so all of that was great. But once we got there, I found that it was a lot of a job rather than my love. And so I have realized that I'm in this transition where I want to give this artistic directorship up, but I want everything to be healthy with the chamber music series. So I'm trying to do it in a really good way. I also have some other opportunities that are coming. We just moved to Vancouver Island. We were based in Vancouver, Canada, and it's a beautiful house and it's a totally different lifestyle. So I'm looking to find some work over here that's a little bit less responsibility and more playing because I love playing the violin. That's what I've always done all my life. So I guess what I need help with, I have three streams. One is my personal life and that is going well. The other stream is my violin playing and my new job that I'm looking to get. But the one I think I need the most help with is this legacy plan I've got. The new incoming artistic director will be coming in as of June 1, 2026. He will be joining me officially in January and we'll work together. And I've already signed a contract with the board saying, no, I am not writing the grants as of January. He is, but I'm going to be advising. So I've set it up really well, but at the same time, I know that I need to make a bunch of SOPs. He's going to be shadowing me in the fall. And although I want to enjoy my summer and I really need to get practicing and thinking about my violin playing, I want to have my ducks in a row. I want it to be no more work than usual, if anything, less work than usual.
Yes.
So, and I think I really struggle. I struggle with breaking tasks down. I noticed that in the quarterly planning, and I struggle with calendarizing, and I struggle with doing SOPs. I'm resisting doing that, although I have started.
Excellent.
Can I jump in here and add a little bit of context that may even help more? So your husband was in the organization. You successfully, through some of the work that we did in Tribe in the bootcamp, transitioned him out so that he could enjoy his retirement more. And so that's been great. You've also relocated to you were in Vancouver, now you're on Vancouver Island. So just want to give you a lot of kudos for the work that you've done so far, because a lot of that, I remember when we were working on how do I get my husband out of that organization, it seemed like impossible. And now we're looking at it through the rearview mirror. Like, okay, well, that's done. So you're leapfrogging yourself. It's like, okay, I did this and then I did this and now I did this and now I'm even going for more. So a lot of kudos in order here for like living in the dream, past the dream, past the dream, past the dream. So I think this is fantastic work. Also, we get with a lot of our clients where one of the spouses is in full retirement and the other one's still in more of an active stage, that there's a disconnect there. So just wanted to like highlight that for the listener of like, I think a lot of people will relate to that, where there's, my husband wants to be living like this and I'm still pulled a little bit over here into this, either by choice or just by necessity. So wanted to throw that into the mix as well.
Well, I love where you're at right now, Joan, because one of the things you kept saying, especially in your pre-notes too, is that you want more freedom. Like you've done what you wanted now in terms of your career in a large part, right? You've accomplished so much. And now you're like, well, I want more, of course, always, but I also am just craving that freedom. You love just practicing violin for several hours a day, which in and of itself is just, extraordinary.
At least.
Yeah, at least. I mean, I can't even. That's amazing. So yeah, I'm really excited that you're really leaning into that and wanting to create that space for yourself because it's so well deserved. And one thing I would say just off the bat is with succession planning and legacy planning, this is something that everybody struggles with because it seems just like such this huge monumental task. It seems like you're trying to boil down like years and years of your life into a couple sheets of paper to try to pass on all of this knowledge that you have to the next person. And so it can feel very, very overwhelming. One of the exercises that we were thinking about for you and anyone in the position of trying to replace themselves in their job is really giving yourself permission from trying to transfer all of the nitty-gritty details and really keeping it much higher level than you think it needs to be. Starting from like a much higher level place than you might even think, it could be as general as, hey, like here is my look back for my tenure in this role. And here's my boil down. Here's my top 10 lessons. Maybe things I wish I had known before I had accepted this role that now I've learned. So you're really taking more of a general approach where it's not specific instructions for where things are located or what to do or how to run, a concert. It's much more like, whoa, here is my boil down. If I only had 10 lessons to give you, here they are.
Carey, can I just jump in and say, if you do that right, what Carey's saying, a person could always work from that kind of clarity down into the details, but they will never work from the details into that kind of clarity. Does that make sense? So it's not going to go both ways. It's a one-way street. Now, ideally, you have a little bit of both. You have a good mix of both. You have a really good high-level documentation and instruction, and you've got some choice selected, specific SOPs. But I have seen clients sort of think, well, if I could just write every SOP for every single process down to the last decimal place, then this person can absorb it and infer the big stuff. And often the big stuff is sort of almost like you're blind to it because it's part of your life experience and your lived experience. And so you've almost forgotten it or not realized how important it was. So Carey came up with some examples earlier and I'll pass it over to her, but just sort of like, who are the stakeholders and what are their personalities? How do they like to be communicated to? How have you found success in managing and wrangling all the different stakeholders? That's the kind of thing you would leave out sometimes of an SOP, and just forget about. And it can often be the most important thing. And then we write an SOP for how to blow your nose and throw the tissue in a wastebasket. And it's like, okay, well, I think we didn't need that SOP. What we really needed was a training on, hey, how do you wrangle? And, looking at your role, it's like, wow, how do you wrangle all the stakeholders, all of the grant writers? How do you wrangle the grant givers? How do you wrangle the artists? And, this is sometimes the really important context that gets left out. So Carey, I don't know if I'm going to pass it to you or to Joan, but just really want to underline what Carey said here is a really smart person, given the full picture and the really high level stuff, can work down into the low level, but it really doesn't work the other way around. Carey, does that gel with where you were taking it?
Yeah, I love that. And I think also what's great about transitioning to somebody else who is actually going to take over your role is, remember, they're going to be doing work for you. So rather than someone who's trying to outsource their current job to people who have other jobs, that's where you really need those specific SOPs and the detailed instructions. But you're transitioning to someone who is fully capable of doing the exact same work that you're doing right now. And so what they're going to find to be a lot more valuable is, for example, examples like big buckets and file groupings of grants that went well, grants that you thought should have gone well but didn't, and grants that failed. And so then you can sort of give them high level your takeaways of here's what went well, here's what I thought could be good, but I was wrong, and here's what failed. And then they can use those exact examples to go forward in the role and learn from it that way. Yeah, I mean, I think also just like taking it a little bit outside the box. I don't know if this person will be actually running the symphonies and the concerts like you have been, but I remember talking about before, how do you know if it's going well? Like, how do you put on a great show? What are the criteria that Joan looks for in order to make that happen? It could be really interesting to take a lot of the recordings from the concerts you thought were particularly good and store those in a file and say, here's my top 5. And here's why I think each of these went so well. And these are my gold standard performances. Just examples to help them get a sense of like, here's where I'm leaving this job so that hopefully they can just take it even to like a higher level.
Just to put a bow on this and pass it to Joan and see what she thinks. I do think there's a bias because we have a sort of controlling nature, and there's almost a voice in your head that's like, boy, I really want this transition to go well. I'm going to try to control it and make it go well. So in doing so, I'm going to put upon myself this need to document every last thing down to the last decimal place. And ironically, almost overwhelm the new person who's coming in with a lot of minutia, but underdo it in terms of the high level stuff, almost because it didn't occur to me. Whereas if they're a really smart, talented person, even in a scenario where you only gave them the high level stuff, they could probably infer some of the lower level stuff. In the end, I think where we want to find is a 70-30 balance or a 60-40 balance, where you're really heaving up on that high level understanding. Like, hey, your instinct would tell you to go left here. Actually, you want to go right. Or your instinct might tell you to, interact with this person in this way. You actually want to interact with them in a different way. Or here's 5 examples of things that went right. Here's 5 examples of things that didn't go so right. So really heavying up a little bit more on that side so that they get less instruction and more understanding. True, deep understanding, like, oh, I get it. This really is the cream skimmed off of the top of Joan's experience. And then when it comes to specific SOPs, definitely we'll want some of those, but we'll want to ask ourselves, what's the 80-20 here? What are the specific SOPs that have disproportionate leverage where you think it might take them years to piece back together the way that you figured out how to do it? And there's a long tail of that. You're never going to get to the very end of that tail. There's always going to be a point at which you say, okay, ran out of time, can't do any more there. And it's going to be good enough because I was working it from the right end. Joan, let me pass it to you and see how this is landing with you.
I can't tell you, Demir and Carey, how relieved I am to hear that I should start from the top level down, because I'm good at the top level and I understand what works on that level. And that's where I came from as an artistic director. I've loved curating the series and having a theme for the season. And so I think that is going to be an easy job for me. I'll enjoy that. And the person that we've chosen is actually very smart and thinks my way, this top level way. So my one concern, I guess, because I was trying to do a good job of being productive and doing things well and when I got the manager on, I did these specific SOPs because it was handing over things that my husband did. And I had to be that kind of instructive thing. And the way it's gone for us has been, I felt like it's become more of all the low level stuff. And that's what I not liked about it. And so I can see that maybe in the fall, because he's just following me and he's, that's where I can really impart a lot of the high level stuff. And then in the spring, I'm going to be signing him. I say, okay, you need to figure out the season. I've showed you what works, what doesn't. And here's my Excel file, how I do it. And so does that make sense to do the high level stuff in the fall?
It's as good a plan as any I could come up with, right? I just want to add one more thing, which was Carrie and I have usually had a philosophy of try to do less than more when it comes to documentation, or 80-20. What's the 20% that gets you 80% of your result? When we were early in our SOP journey, we would sort of imagine what's every possible end case scenario, and let's create an SOP for it. And then you end up having a bunch of SOPs that never really get used and were sort of unnecessary to make. And so remember that, start with the important stuff, the high level stuff, work down into the really leveraged SOPs and documentations that you think, wow, this took me a lot of trial and error to figure out the right way to do this. I don't think it's intuitive. I don't think they'll naturally get it without years of trial and error. So I'll do those ones because I think those will be the highest value. And remember that if you're still on in a consultative capacity, like doing an hour-long call each week or something like that, you can also just whip out these SOPs really quick on demand if you find that they did actually end up being needed. Carrie, what do you think?
Yeah, we're going through a team transition right now where we're letting some folks go, we're bringing some new folks on. And whenever that happens, I do an audit of everybody's work. And I start first with the question too of, do we even still need to be doing this thing? Based on where the business is at right now, what are the business's goals? Where are we trying to get by the end of the year? What's most leveraged? What's the biggest, most leveraged problem we could solve? And does all this other stuff that we're doing right now even solve that problem? Like, should I even be training the new person in it? Or is it just something that we've always done and we should keep doing it because it's always been done that way? Usually the answer is no. So when I take a look at people's to-do lists and I'm transitioning to a new person, for some people, I'm cutting 70% of what they're doing. And I'm just saying, you know what? We're not doing that anymore. I get why we did that in the past. It was good. It's nice. It's just not leveraged moving forward. You could probably get away without doing it for a long time before you notice that it's a problem again. And then the problem will come up and we'll tackle it then. So this is actually an ego clearing exercise too, in for you, because you don't like to feel that you can be replaced or that a lot of what you're doing right now is actually maybe not necessary. But the truth is that even big jobs are replaced all the time. You have CEOs of Fortune 500 companies that get, fired one day and their replacement has to come in with absolutely no context. And guess what? Those companies seem to run just fine. So, it can be done. It will be done. It's going to be good enough. I would definitely take that pressure off of yourself to try and do it, in some kind of perfect way. I would say if your energy's not in it, if you're naturally, your focus is being pulled towards something else, use that. Use that as the motivation for when the couple hours a week when you are going to sit down and do your training manual for this new person, that you just, you do what you have to do during that time and then you forget the rest that doesn't end up happening.
So put in a really generalized way that anybody can relate to, I think if your starting point is, here's what perfect looks like. I've got a lot of emotional baggage around making this go perfect, which it's not. No matter what you do, perfect is never going to happen. We never achieve perfect. Then you will constantly compromise your lifestyle, your violin playing, your current opportunities, because you'll just say, I just have to hit perfect. Versus if you take a different vector into it and say, this is how much time this gets to have, right? I'm going to do the best job I can get in this much time. And I'm going to work from the leveraged end towards the less leveraged end. And wherever I stop, that's going to be good enough, right? If I'm always working from leverage, that I will have always done the most high impact stuff first. And we get where we get. I'm making myself generously available even after I've transitioned out of this, so that anything that didn't get cleaned up, we can always go in later and polish that up, just really quickly. So that, I think, would be my advice here. I have a funny story. Speaking to Carrie's comment on ego clearing, So I was in this role in finance for like 5 years. I created all the models. I wrote all the reports. Nobody looked over my shoulder. Like it was me as like the only cog in the machine. And I left and, I offered to stay on and transition somebody, and they said, no, go ahead and just leave. And I said, are you sure? Because like, I'm the dude, like I'm the cog in the machine. You guys are just, they're like, nah, here's your pay. You're free to go now. And I remember for like a month walking around being like, it must be just like a disaster over there. And I called one of my friends who still worked there and knew intimately what was going on. I was like, is it crazy? And they're like, no, we're doing fine. And it was such an ego blow for me because, in my mind, like I'm the only thing keeping this place together, and I think we have this tendency to elevate the importance of what we do. Sometimes it's true. A lot of times it's not, right? And we have a tendency to underestimate other people's ability when the need is there to figure it out. It's figure outable, right? And so I share that with you just to sort of say, there is two psychological things I think operating here. One is your tendency for perfectionism, and I want to get this right, and I've got an emotional load that's biasing me here, but also just our natural tendency to inflate how important our work is. And the way that you've structured this is beautiful because you've got a long runway. You know the Lifehack method. You've been through the boot camp. You know how to do the documentation. You know how to do the SOPs. Your company or the organization has already bought into it. They're already using the SOPs. So like, good. You're building on a platform of wins. You've got a lot of time to do the documentation and a lot of runway to do the training. And you're making yourself available. You're not like disappearing into the wind. You're still making yourself available. One of the things I thought when I was reading this is I was like, there's no problem here such that other than you creating an expectation and a weight on yourself around how this has to go. But by the way, if I'm wrong, hit me back on that. I mean, I could be wrong.
No, you're not wrong, because I have no doubt that the new person will find his own way, and he's going to take it new places, and I'm happy that that's going to happen. I'm really, I've done all the things that I wanted to do, and so I think that it is that perfectionism thing, and the thinking that I'm not very organized, and that my files are a mess, and all those things. I've always been on the high level, great, and I can play my violin in a way that it seems like there's no problems, right? It's the underneath thing that's where my ego goes, like, oh, you're no good, you can't organize. Yeah. And it's not true. And who cares?
Hey, okay. I mean, every single one of us feels that we are not organized enough.
Really?
There is a whole level of organization that every single one of us can go to. Like, not one single person listening to this probably feels that they are that Marie Kondo level. If they are, they should probably be pursuing a career as a professional organizer, because those people they must spend all of their time organizing. And who has the time for that? And also doing another job. It's just too much. I mean, we at Lifehack Method, we never want to be totally organized. We just want to have things organized to the point that you can find what you need. So that's why a system like Google Drive works so great, is because you can have that searchability. Honestly, Joan, like, I don't organize my stuff into folders. I would say maybe half of it is in folders, hopefully a good folder. But most of the time I'm just using that search bar in Google Drive. Oh, okay, let's see. I probably called it something like this. Yep, I was right. I called it this. It has this in the name of it, so I was able to find it. And that's how I train the rest of my team to find things too, because who knows where other team members are organizing their things. And I want to have a whole training for them just on file organization and documentation for that. I mean, boring, so boring. And the room for mistake and failure is so high. So you want to create those more like flexible processes and let yourself off the hook for that. Because I'll open my office drawer right here. Look, there's a bunch of kids' artwork in here and some bills. It's not organized, and it's fine. It's fine because I'm doing other more important things with my time.
It's like an asymptote, right? You can always approach the number, but you'll never hit the number, but you just keep going out into infinity and you'll never quite hit the number.
The limit does not exist.
But there's a point at which you've captured like the majority of the value, and you just have to say, like, from here down, the rest of this road is just madness. I could just keep chasing my tail down the rest of this pathway, and I would really just be chasing my own sense of insufficiency and insecurity, or realizing that I'm chasing a sensation of being in control or controlling an outcome that really, when I step back, I really can't control, right? This person is going to succeed or not succeed primarily based on their own merits and not based on your documentation, right? Now, can you support them a little bit? Yes, but on the majority, it's not actually going to have anything to do with your documentation, or at least very little to do with your documentation. So there's a point at which we're moving out of productivity and into just psychology of like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I holding myself to the standard? Why am I trying to control this so tightly? And the answer starts to become a more emotional answer, not a productivity answer. I'm doing this because I want to make sure that I guarantee an outcome, which I can't.
It's such a beautiful place to be at too, because like you want them to succeed. You care so deeply about this organization and about the product and about the experience, which is amazing. And I think there are some things that you can do during the training process of this individual to sort of give them little tests and course correct right away, so that you avoid something like, maybe you're wondering and catastrophizing if there's going to be some abject just disaster and catastrophe that is going to befall, and the organization will sustain some kind of hit that it can't recover from. So then during the training process, you might want to structure in a couple little tests where they're forced to make a judgment call by themselves. And then before that's shared with anybody else, it goes through you, and you take that opportunity to be like, okay, well, actually, here's why I think you should have taken a different approach to this. And this is how I would have done it. And here's why. So I would definitely think more about that as like, hey, how can I keep on testing this individual to see if their comprehension is at the level they need to be at?
Just to put a cap on that, what I think Carey's saying, and she said this in our last session with somebody, is making sure that you're focusing on understanding over instruction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do they understand more than are they instructed? Because sometimes we go down this black hole or this asymptotic chase of like, if I write enough instruction, they will infer the understanding. And sometimes you can just go straight to the understanding and then fill in the instruction in gaps as necessary. Over to you, Joan. How's this landing?
Yeah. The one thing that doesn't really resonate with me is I don't feel like I'm not catastrophizing. I feel like once I've handed it over, I'm going to help, but I already feel like I don't care so much. I don't care. I care on the high level, but I really don't, I trust that it's going to be good.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm getting out of this is that I'm putting this thing that, I have to do a good job of the little nitty gritty SOPs because I'm being somehow a good girl. So, cause I'm going like, it's going to be freedom soon. But I better be, I better do my job because I'm getting paid and
Another approach you can take then in those sorts of situations when you really just like do not care enough, but you're like, no, I should really explain this. You can shift your focus more towards doing checklists. So rather than explaining out every detail, if you're like, okay, I have to prepare for this event this week. All right, well, okay, I'm doing it. Let me just write a quick checklist of everything that I'm doing in order to then be prepared for this thing. And so you might not explain then in detail what each one means. It might be like contact general manager with total invitee list. It's like, okay, they might not know how to do that, but they see it on the checklist and they probably will go to the general manager and be like, hey, what does Joan usually provide to you so that I can go and find it and give it to you?
And, just to jump back for a second to searchability, you already have a ton of SOPs and checklists. So a very easy step might even just be to go through and say, okay, if I have this checklist or if I'm creating this checklist and there's SOPs to support it, let's go find it and link it in here. And so one of the ways that I find my way to a lot of SOPs is we tend to have, business documentation, or we call it a master map. A person could also call it a business manual. And all it is a Google Doc. And it says, I'll use your use case. This is the 90 days out checklist for a live concert. Meaning like this document will just, every bullet is just a thing you have to do. And so it might be categorized into, 90 days out to 60 days out. Here's the things that need to be done. And then link in the SOPs where relevant, where you already have them. Maybe fill in an SOP here or there. That doesn't exist. Let me just fill it in real quick. Again, only if it's leveraged. All right, 60 to 30 days out. Here's the things that need to be done. And maybe even we often have a assignee, like a name. So like, Aiden will do this, or, Crystal will do this part, right? So then what's great about those kinds of documents is they're great for searchability, because then when you're like, where's that SOP? You can either just search it in a search bar of Google, or you could even just go into your business process document and be like, okay, well, that's where I'll find it. It really helps make the checklist a lot more powerful, because then if they do have a question, they can always refer back to the SOP. And it also makes more utilization of SOPs that might end up getting lost in the mix because they're linked in and cross-linked. So a lot of times we'll have, if we assign an Asana task and we have a recurring Asana task, we'll put the SOP in there. So cross-linking your SOPs is also a great improvement on searchability, because then there's 5 or 6 ways somebody could stumble onto that SOP. But the document itself, I just want to pause on that. Just having a document like that itself, where it's like, 90 days, 60 days, 30 days, the week before. Those type of documents can be really great, because somebody could come in and scan them and actually derive a huge amount of benefit just by scanning that document and being like, whoa, this actually gives me a preview of the entire process, just in a little nutshell. There's not too much. The documentation of how to do it the how isn't here. It's just the what. This needs to be, these reservations and, bookings need to be done. By this date, we need to confirm the musicians. We need to reconfirm the musicians 30 days out, right? Just those, that can provide a tremendous amount of understanding. I'll bet if you gave one of those documents to me, I'd be like, maybe I don't know exactly how to do it, but I have a pretty good understanding just reading this document, how this thing needs to go together. I can't resist a quick story. So Sarah, who Coach Sarah, used to work in politics, local politics in her area, and did it for many years and then got tired of it, but became a little bit of a cog in the machine. And they were like, how can we operate without you? She put together an Excel spreadsheet version of what I'm saying. And you could literally put in the date of the election. And based on that date, it would reverse back. And every single checklist point would get a date based on the date of the election. And it would have a little check mark like, okay, 90 days before the election, these things need to happen. 60 days for the election, these things need to happen, right? So it was just a really clever way. And she gave this to them and said, everything that I did for you is here in this. Go for it.
Lovely.
Cool.
Well, awesome. Joan, I would love to hear sort of what are your takeaways so far from this conversation? What's been like the major things that were like 1 or 2 aha moments? And what are you going to be sort of putting into practice after this podcast?
Okay, well, I'm going to work backwards, because what you just said about the calendar checklist, that makes a lot of sense for what I do. And that won't be that hard for me to do. And we already have a master plan for the general manager. And some of those things, that it can all go in that master plan. So I'll just start adding things in. But the 80-20 and the high level and understanding instead of instruction, that was really helpful. And this just, again, the relief of, honestly, I came here fully expecting to be chastised for not doing enough SOPs and not being organized enough and not being a good enough girl.
Does that sound like us, Joan? Does that sound like what me and Demir sound like?
I was expecting, I was like, okay, Joan, just get in there and take it,
Oh my goodness. No. And in fact, quite the opposite. I can't help but just pick up on a thread that Carey said, and this is something that's for you, but also for the person who's stepping into this role, is a transition of a role is a great time to step away with new perspective and say, like, what gets to be cut here? Because, every organization, every company sort of builds a little bit of fat around the gut, right? It's just steps, processes, tools that were important at one point aren't so important anymore. We've sort of evolved back away from that, or there's a better way to do it. And so just a great opportunity, both for you and for this new person, to look at this role through a fresh lens. One of the things that Carey does that I love is that every time a person rolls off of our team, she'll jump into their seat for 2 to 4 weeks and just do their job as an opportunity both to get reacquainted as a manager with, like, oh, what does this job even do? I haven't focused on this job for 3-4 years, maybe. What are they doing? And see if we can eke out a little bit more efficiency, cut some things. And then as we transition it to the new person, leave them with a leaner, meaner, tighter, more common sense, job description and set of SOPs and instructions.
Yeah, I would never wish the next person have to do all the things I have done, because I think I've stepped in and done way more than I needed to. Like you were saying, that there's extra. Yeah.
Yeah. That goes to the understanding too, doesn't it? This idea of like, hey, in my experience, here's the 80-20 of this role. Here's all the things you have to do. But in my personal experience, here's the things that if you do it well, nobody really notices the rest. You could drop a couple things over here and people may or may not notice, but they won't really care, or they might not even notice if this stuff over here gets dropped. It's really this stuff over here where you see that people are seeing, that people are experiencing, that people are caring about.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I'm extremely excited for you, Joan. This is an amazing new chapter that you're getting to enter into. I am so happy that Demir and I get to watch you step into this new version of Joan, spending her time in a totally different way. I would love to hear more of your violin music too. So if there's a place we can go to hear more of that. Is there anything else you wanted to cover off on before we end our conversation today?
No, I've got lots of things to think about. And again, I'm pleasantly surprised that I wasn't chastised.
We don't do that over here, okay? Like, that's not something that we do. Demir sometimes has to do it, but then people thank him for it. He does it in a very nice way.
But it's a learning thing for me to see that, I just did the quarterly pre-planning and I had a great win. And and it has to do with all of this transition that I just negotiated my contract in a really great way so that I am, not doing things. I'm
Advising.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And as of January, and that I'm implementing this season that I planned, but the next person has to plan the season. So,
right.
Because it makes sense. Like I wouldn't plan next season if I'm not the artistic director. Like, it's all in the future. So
yeah.
Right.
Anyway, they needed to know that. So I feel really good. But I guess it's always hard to say to myself, yeah, I did a good job of that. Because it's that.
It's incredibly leveraged. What you're talking about is something that actually probably didn't take you all that much time to do, but it was extremely leveraged. That was absolutely the right move. And so you already have, coming into this conversation, having negotiated that, like you just, hit a home run. Like, you already did it. You did it. And now you're just coasting. I mean, and let's be honest, you're saying January 1st is when you roll off, but like, you got the holidays. So we're really talking about the next 3 months. And so you are just like in the home stretch now.
Cool.
And as we're signing off, I just want to say, this is such a great example of what we stand for in Lifehack Method, right? It's not productivity. for productivity's sake or working hard so that you can work even longer hours, which is often how it goes. The world is a little bit mysterious. Like a lot of times the reward for doing hard work is that the world just gives you more hard work. And so we're really here to focus on like, how do we do the hard work so that we can get the life that we really deserve to have? And through being a Lifehack Tribe member and doing that, and then jumping into the boot camp for the more intensive coaching, it's like, I just love setting a big impossible goal and then achieving it, setting a big new impossible goal, then achieving it. And at the very end of the rainbow is freedom, because that's what we really stand for. We're productivity for freedom seekers, not people who just want to go out there and hustle. So congratulations on that.
Yay.
Awesome.
Good.
Well, let's wrap it up there. Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners of the podcast. Hope you enjoy these one-on-ones that Carey and I are doing.
Thank you so much, Joan. Awesome to speak with you today.
Thanks, Carey. Thanks, Demir.